So many of you have heard of Shanann and Chris Watts. It was a terrible tragedy in Colorado where Chris Watts murdered his 2 daughters, an unborn son, and his wife. Notice there will be a trigger warning in this. Lots of really traumatic stuff. But he had an affair with a woman named Nikki, and I wanted to attempt to see if I could channel Shanann instead of remote viewing her, so I could see it from her perspective and see exactly what happened, because there's been sort of conflicting perspectives that Nikki might be involved. And this was very interesting. And she came through very clearly as like an angelic figure with blue light around her. She was completely cloaked in white and blue at the edges. And Cece and Bella and Nico came through with her. They were all children. So I asked her what happened that evening. And she said she trusted the life that she was building with Chris and the man that she loved. And she thought that they were a family full of love and potential. And she almost felt like she could overcome anything. But she felt things changing and they were unraveling, and it was sort of freaking her out. And on that night, she didn't understand the depth of his darkness, the lengths that he would go to undo this family that he had created. It was very sudden and unexpected. She felt a lot of confusion, betrayal, and fear, and it happened so fast. It was like the blink of an eye. He made a choice, and that choice ended her life and took that away from her and her daughter's life. And her son. And she tried to protect them even in her last moments. And I saw her leaving her body, and she couldn't stop what she had planned. So she wants her story to bring awareness to the situation, and she wants people to trust their instincts. And she's actually appearing to people who are going through abuse and helping them with their intuition to leave the situation. And she wants to know that people know that love doesn't come with harm or deceit. And her legacy isn't just about how she died. It's about how she lived and how she loved her children and how she would want others to be treated and stronger and safer and more aware than she was allowed to be, essentially, because she didn't see any of this coming. So that night started like so many others. She came home from a plane flight, and there was something in the air. She felt like a tension that she couldn't explain. It was really thick. And she confronted him about the things that she was feeling and the distance between them and the lies. And she thought they were just going to have like this normal conversation, that they were going to talk it out. Maybe it would get a little bit heated, but to find a way forward, because she really believed that they could figure anything out for the sake of their family. But his response was really different this time. There was this like coldness in his eyes. She said that she felt like she was dealing with death. And she tried to reason with him, but it was as like the lights were on, but nobody was home. It was like he already decided what he was going to do and what was going to happen. And she didn't understand how the person that she had loved and trusted with her life could take it away from her and could just be non-existent in this vessel now. And so he attacked her when she was the most vulnerable in this moment of like trying to work things out. And she said the pain and the shock and the realization, it was so fast, but it was so quick, and it was like the end. And she thought of her babies, and she just sent them so much love and of the life they had built. And she didn't anticipate what was going to happen to them, but she really couldn't understand. She was being torn apart by how fast this was happening, and the man that was supposed to love her had taken it from her. So around 2:30, she got home, and she crawled into bed. And it's very strange because he told a story that they were intimate this evening. And she said, no, that did not happen. He began initiating intimacy, but it was like this was in his head. And she said that it was not true. Like she was miles away from him. He was miles away from her. And that he created this story to create doubt and to shift the focus, to make himself appear less calculated and more like a man who was struggling with a decision and this momentary lapse in control. Instead of a cold, calculated killer. So it was supposed to be a conversation, like she was going to confront him about the lies. And I asked her if she felt like she knew he was having an affair, and she said she knew something was off. And she saw him completely disassociate from himself. Like he was completely consumed by his darkness. And something in his eyes that night was just like the lights were on, but nobody was home. And it was cold and detached, so he had completely disassociated. And when she asked him for the truth, he didn't respond with words, but he responded with violence. And he began to choke her. And he overpowered her, and basically it happened very quickly. She struggled, but she wasn't really prepared for this, and he had a lot of immense strength, and she couldn't believe what was happening. So she left her body, and she was taken to the baby's room and then to the truck, And in this moment, she could see the darkness surrounding him, driving him forward, and she was just hoping and praying that what was coming next wasn't what was going to happen. But the girls, they were still in the house. They were unaware of what had happened to her. He woke them and took them outside, and they saw her, like, watch the body, but they didn't really understand what was going on. And he said she was sick. And she saw him take the family to the whole place, the oil site, and then she saw what he did to the kids. And obviously I'm not going to get into that, but he couldn't face his own failures. And there was something greater at that moment that surrounded her in this darkness. She wasn't alone, and there was like a peace and warmth and the presence of something far, far beyond the pain and greater than her. She was lifted into the space of love and understanding, where the bonds of what she lost were not severed, but they were eternal. And she's with her daughters and her son, and they are still connected, and nothing can ever break that. And she wanted me to see that. It was a really beautiful thing, that no matter what, that never gets disconnected. I asked her if Nikki was involved, and she said, I didn't know Nikki personally, but I was aware of her presence in Chris's life, how it changed him. I didn't know exactly that she existed, but how it created a distance between them. And she said her influence on Chris can't be ignored, that she represented a life that he wanted to escape from, and that this desire fueled his choices. And however, she holds Chris fully responsible and accountable for his actions, because he made these decisions and carried them out. She also feels like if Nikki knew more, then she admitted, or if she played any more of a role in encouraging him to turn away from his family, that is something that she will have to live with, and she feels like she should be accountable for this. She said definitely she had a role in what happened, whether it was actively participating or encouraging it, or any more than that. And she should face accountability for that. But she said justice isn't about vengeance. It's about uncovering the truth. And so from what I sense, her influence on Chris was significant. She represented, like I said, this life that he wanted to escape from, and one that may have completely pushed him over the edge. And I also got the intense feeling that this is also representative of the mother figure in his life. Like, the mother seemed to be very controlling, and he was always made to be very quiet. And it was like this repetitive behavior with women. So it was almost like what he was doing was his revenge on his mother. And it feels like this is a pattern for many, many incarnations, right? So it all just kind of came to a head. And I know people would ask, well, must have been overcome by some kind of demon or something. And I asked her about that, and she said, absolutely not. She said this was his own darkness. And she said Nikki was not innocent in her actions, and her involvement feels intentional at a certain level, but that she was feeding into Chris's discontent and encouraging him to leave his family. And she should be held accountable for that, because she fostered this fantasy that allowed him to completely detach from himself and his family. And but when I asked, was she there the night of, she said no, she wasn't there. She wasn't in the house. She left her body. She was able to see she was not there. But she said she was active participant in covering up stuff, and she felt like she should be held accountable for that. And the ripple effects of those choices led to this moment. So I asked if she intended on reincarnating, and she said not at this particular time. Right now she's working with other women who have suffered abuse, and she's involved in that, coming to them and counseling them, helping them through it, helping them trust their intuition. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, how she's helping from the other side. And her kids and her son are all doing this kind of work for, like, in their own age groups. So maybe she said that's maybe something that in the future that she'll do, but right now this is what she feels called to do. And I asked her if she had visited Chris, and she said absolutely, that one night in this silence she came to him, and it wasn't about vengeance or, making him feel bad, but it was about accountability. And she said that he will have to go through incarnations in the future where he has to experience the same level of things that he did to his family. So I'd like to know what you guys think about this, and let me know, because this was really, really powerful to see things from the other side and to see that they're still very connected. And so I wanted to give you guys this message of hope, because we never die. And it was a very beautiful thing to see something like that come out of this tragedy. Love you guys.